Oh,
We gotta
savager
build. We
than
got.
you.
Yeah, we gotta decide if you're gonna do that every time, or if we're just gonna like not. Because I always think that I gotta do it. So
Little beans and rice. He is in the building. What's up, little beans and rice? Welcome on in, man. James Boggs, of course, always here. I almost said Biggs. Sorry about that, sir. My apologies. Welcome on in to episode 239. Tonight we're going to be talking about some ancient technology, mythology, and all the beautiful things therein. As always, I am your beloved host, Robert Solomon, and with me, this guy over here, this guy right
you
there.
gotta do the other way.
Well, this way goes, but this way it doesn't look right because you're not over here on my
I am
end.
on
You're
my
over
screen.
on my screen. You're over here. So this guy over here, it's my boy. You know him as
I'm.
Spider. Yes,
That's
that
right.
was an intro. That was an intro that Spider created
Mhm.
from yeah. That's weird because it looks different on mine, but Spider is right.
I usually am right most of the time.
Oh, see, a little bit of egotism. Dig a
Yay!
little bit of egotistical nature. Hey guys, how's it going? It's going good. Zachariah, what's going on? So everybody, how is everybody's day going? It is Friday here in the OH10, and if anybody is in the OH10 like me and my co-star, you will know that our weather has been an absolute dumpster fire as of
Oh
late.
my goodness.
Did you go
Oh my
outside
goodness.
the other day? Did you smell the smell that the smells was
I had
smelling?
to. I had to go out to the grocery store. I had to take the dog
It's
out throughout
crazy.
the day, and man, it's like you know how you go to the beach,
I do.
and there's a little bit of a haze in the air that's like the evaporation coming off the water on a really
I
hot
do.
beach
I
day.
do.
This looked like that, but everything else was different. Like it smelled like
Mhm.
I don't know, like it it,
It
it
smelled like
smelled
burning
like
tires.
it had weird smells. Like sometimes it smelled like burning things, and then other times it smelled like old malted chocolate milk mix from the 80s.
Oh yeah, I remember
It's
that.
a very
I remember that.
distinctive smell, and it's like it always smelled horrible, but you're always like as a kid, oh man, I love this stuff.
I can't believe I'm getting chocolate milk. It's gonna be great.
Yeah, but it
Nah,
smelled like ugh.
if you want my personal opinion, I don't think it's necessarily wildfires. I mean, we have those train derailments that have happened. Excuse me, here in the Midwest, we had the East Palestine thing that happened. I believe. When did that happen? Like May, maybe before that,
Yeah,
April.
maybe a little bit before that, maybe April, but very recently, very
But I
recently.
saw a map of like all the train derailments that have been happening, and
Mhm.
it's not been looking good. And a lot of the stuff has been into farms, river systems. So I don't know. This just smells weird to me. For a wildfire, just kind of weird that it smells like that. Maybe there's a scientific explanation. And if you guys know the scientific explanation, by all means, please let us know in these comments. But I think that's what's really kind of shaking everything up. Like I was at work 2 days ago. That would have been what, Wednesday? What's today? Today's Friday.
Mhm.
So that was Wednesday, and or no, it was Tuesday actually. Tuesday or Wednesday, one of those days. And I went outside and there was like a weird haze, and then I started smelling the air, and I was like, "Why does it smell like
Mhm.
chemical burns? Like somebody's burning chemicals? It didn't smell like, wood smell has a different smell than anything else. When somebody's doing that, when somebody's burning wood, obviously it has a certain smell. But this smelled like chemicals. And I don't know if any of you out there saw this. I know West Virginia got kind of hit with some of it, Pennsylvania,
It got
obviously,
pretty
and then
deep.
Ohio.
It got pretty deep.
So, and I guess they're still raging.
Mhm.
So it's just really
They're
weird
calling
to
for
me.
it for most of the summer. Do you want to hear a really
Crazy.
ridiculous like conspiracy theory that's probably not true that I'm just thought up because I wanted to be a troll for a little while?
Sure, go ahead. This is your time to shine.
And I don't want to offend anybody with it.
But he will. He will.
It's not meant to be like a political statement or anything. I just wanted to say it because I thought it was funny in my head because I thought it was a good joke. Um, the virus, they wanted you to stay in and wear your mask, right?
Mm-hmm.
The wildfires, they want you to stay in and wear your mask. Coinky dink. And that's the joke. It's just stupid, but it's funny.
I wouldn't, you know
The
what?
end result being they want you to stay inside and wear masks all the time.
It ain't making me laugh. I get it,
Because it's dumb. It's really dumb. But I
but it ain't
figured
making me
like
laugh.
somebody out on the internet would actually believe me, which is why I didn't put it on the internet. I just had it on the show as a joke today.
What they need to do, if you're gonna go that route, you also need to like prove a figure, like pull up
Oh yeah,
a mask company
I
that's
wasn't
like
that invested in it.
mask stock rose 15%. after these wildfires, and you could see that people were ordering,
Hmm.
so the mask companies would be super duper politically
I
rich.
wasn't that invested. I thought it up as a dumb thing, and I'm kind of like, yeah, this is really dumb. I'm probably not even going to tell anybody. But then I thought I'll save it for the show and say it and be stupid because it's dumb. It's almost as good as the birds,
I don't even want to get into that. That's almost as stupid as flat Earth to me. But what do I know?
or that Australia isn't real,
That's
because
a
that's
whole
another good
other
one too.
thing. Yeah, that's another good one too. Yep. But how
I'll add
you know
that
what?
to the
I'm not into
list.
that. James said
That's all.
it was bad all the way to DC on Wednesday. Yeah, I heard it
Hmm.
spanned quite a distance. I know we saw it. It looked so weird to me because it looked like a weird thick haze. And like I
They had
said,
that.
I had to turn on the air because I wasn't gonna let that in the house.
Little Beans and Rice says this, and that's funny because that was on an episode of old '90s Garfield cartoon that my daughter watches like today. Wyoming isn't real.
It's a weird
That's a good
state.
one though.
I don't
It's funny.
sometimes I don't think Idaho's real. I think we get our potatoes from a clandestine alien outsourcing facility.
There is a mashed potato shortage, instant mashed potatoes. Did you know that?
No, there's always a shortage.
Like, it's really weird. Giant Eagle hasn't had instant mashed potatoes of any brand for 2 months. Where are they at?
Oh, see, I'll talk to Little Beans later because I think he just put this out there. We're all probably going to go into Trouble Town because the FBI is going to be called that Little Beans and Rice here is going to get us all put away for his Wyoming
It
nonsense.
sounds like a Monty Python sketch. What has Wyoming ever done for us? And then somebody makes a huge list, and it's like, well, other than that, what has Wyoming ever done
Right?
for us? Second huge list. Well, other than that,
Isn't Wyoming by Montana? I know the capital is Cheyenne.
it's really like dead center, just about, of the United States.
Just a boot.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, ancient technology in the ancient world. What do you know about ancient technology in the ancient world?
We have mentioned it both realistically and
Mhm.
mythologically quite a bit. We have once again, and I've said it so many shows a lot that I kind of want to stop talking about it just
Go ahead and
because we've
stop
said it so
talking
many
about
times.
it. Stop it.
The Baghdad battery. We
Well,
know
you know
that,
what?
you
Yeah, we
know,
know that one. No, I think that one. I don't think you said that a lot. I think that one's an okay.
it just kind of comes up all the
But if
time
you keep
anytime we're
saying
talking
it,
about it.
then
But
yeah, I probably will end
yeah,
up letting you go. So
right. Pink slip.
pink
Um,
slip,
it's in the
race for
mail,
pink
just
slip,
waiting for a stamp, just for
pink
that
slip. We
day.
race
Just,
for pink slips.
but I mean, that's an example of actual
Mhm.
technology that we know exists, and we know that there's been things like there in what church was it? There was a was it a Christian church or was it like a Roman church?
What are we talking
They
about?
had that big clockwork thing that would come out of like a gate, and it was supposed to be like a prophet or like a deity or like Christ or something like
It
that. It was this
wasn't.
big
Wasn't it? Was
clockwork
didn't we talk about
statue.
this? We talked about this.
Yeah, and
Wasn't this
somebody
an
operated.
automaton?
Yeah, yeah, they had that, and we know that they've had things like that in the past. But then you get into stuff like, well, how about the pyramids? How about the
Mhm,
different things in South America? How they get the blocks just right and everything
mhm.
with primitive hand tools, and you got to wonder, well, where's the technology that we're not finding yet?
Right.
And then you look at the mythology and try to kind of fill in the gaps a little bit and try to interpret that rather than some big monster. Oh, maybe it's actually like a machine of some kind.
Well, how did they make the Nazca lines in Peru? That's
Mm,
another one. I really am a big fan. Like, I would love to go to Peru and see the Nazca lines because you got to wonder who they made them for, how they made them, to the exact measurements. I mean, a lot of us can't even draw regularly. You imagine drawing like that giant ant or that giant bird. And there's like one more. I forget what the other one is, but to be able to see the Nazca lines, I think would be a thing of beauty. That's one of my goals is
mm.
to go to South America because we don't really, we don't really, as a country, we're not really in South America. I mean, we were in Latin America, but that was so we could destabilize governments and then start the
Yeah, the
drug
United
trade
States is
here.
still kind of doing that. But as
Yeah, we're
far as like
definitely doing that.
archaeological stuff,
Yeah, not
we're
really.
not really in there much these days. I mean, you sometimes hear about new stuff in the Mayan ruins and things like
Mhm.
that, but it's mostly international teams. It's not usually like folks from here, government funded, doing, we got to find out about the past. Let's go and do this stuff. You don't
Yeah,
really hear
we
that
don't.
much on our side.
We're too busy doing it in the Middle East. That's like where our bread and butter. A lot of people
Hmm.
say, well, they're doing it for oil. I don't believe that. We have oil here. We could go to Venezuela if we wanted to and take their oil. I don't really see them doing so much about it if we, did it right. But I
Hmm.
think that what we're looking for over there is some of what we're talking about tonight. Some of it probably not. But I think that what you were talking about with the church, that's a very fascinating read. I forget which one that is. We talked about that on the show about
Yeah.
how it came out at a certain time and did a certain action. It was almost like a cuckoo clock. A cuckoo clock does the same thing. At a certain time, a bird will come out, or like a
Hmm.
series of little, they almost look like Russian nesting egg dolls will
Yep.
come out and do a little dance, or they'll hit the bell with their little hammers and things like that. And there's gears and things like that involved in the construction of cuckoo clocks,
Hmm.
watches, that sort of thing, and it's phenomenal. So, but
The
yes, continue. I'm
the
sorry.
Antikythera mechanism, also another thing that we
Yes.
still we've got guesses on what it did and how it worked, but we're not entirely sure still. I mean, there's a lot of good representations of what it might
Hmm.
have been, but no solid
True.
evidence what it actually did.
They've tried to rebuild it, but I don't think they'll ever really rebuild it based on what it really like. They have guesses. They have a lot of
Mm.
guesswork and estimations, but really the whole of Greece and Rome were fascinated with technology,
Hmm.
which comes from ancient Egypt, which came from a society before them. Because I will never subscribe to the theory that we were nothing short of advanced, but I believe our technological advancements weren't the same. Like, for instance, we have things that will cut through stone, and they use a certain type of blade or a certain type of equipment, where in the ancient world when they did it, I don't think they had the same, and they didn't use the same properties that we did. Because we have to remember, we talked about this a few episodes ago, probably like 5 or 6, when we talked about the Adam and Eve
Hmm.
idea that the Earth's pole shifted and that happens. And if that happens, certain things, physics would shift. The mathematics behind that would also shift. So if you have that happening in the ancient times and things shift, because I believe that when people say, our planet is billions of years old, I believe that civilization also takes on that same role of being billions of years old. I don't think that we just all of a sudden we were highly advanced as apes in a
Hmm.
span of 4,000 years. I think that we have, and really that's been disproven, honestly, that we have been just some stupid, cave people. When in reality, you have things like the Great Serpent Mound that was once aged to be, I believe it was like 2,000 years, and they came to find out that it was 10,000
Hmm.
years. It was a lot older. We have Gobekli Tepe, which is, I believe 15, 20,000, maybe more years old. We have all these ancient sites, ancient places that are older. The Great Pyramid of Giza, the Sphinx, not really Egyptian, supposedly. Supposedly it was built by somebody else that
Hmm.
came before the Egyptians. And I like to think that we, as people, have been different races, different creeds, different colors, different cultures. We're not just like, I believe that the white, black, Latino, Asians that you see today are from a one point and then forward. But I believe before that point, whatever cataclysmic event took place on our planet at that time sort of rewrote everything, maybe even rewrote our genetic code due to the whatever was pumped into the air, whatever cataclysm happened that forced us to be wherever to force us to survive. Because it's one thing that people are and always will be is survival. That's what's our top concern. Fresh out of the womb, it's how do we survive? How do we survive when we get up in the morning? How do we survive? And it's not as drastic as it was when people were going nomadic and they were looking for different places, different animals to hunt. But I think everything happens in cycles, and I think we have a rebirth and death cycle, much like the Nordic mythology of Ragnarok. Everything gets destroyed, but then it comes back and it gets rebuilt, and then it gets destroyed, and then it comes back, and then it gets rebuilt, and then it gets destroyed. And it's on a cyclical nature. And so, what I have found when reading about lost civilizations and like their religious beliefs and their religious ideologies is that they talk of previous civilizations, whether it be the jinn from Islam. That was the jinn actually talks about pre-Islamic pagan Arabic world. This was long before we had Muhammad going to Mecca and Medina. So we have that. And we have, the Native Americans that talk about the Blackbeards and the Redbeards being giants, and they had their own little technological advancements. And then, people before that. And I think if we dig deep enough, we could find traces of these ancient civilizations. But I also think, to be honest, that we might never find records of ancient civilizations. Like maybe the earth was destroyed to a point where civilization couldn't be rebuilt in a certain time span and everything is, kind of dusted over. If you look at the Sahara, supposedly that was once a lush jungle. If you look at Antarctica, supposedly that was not a ice wonderland. It was more of a, tropical paradise, which is very possible. And you have to wonder why there's so many people at or in on Antarctic soil. Like, what is the point? There's a bunch of different countries all in this one place. So that's kind of fascinating to me. I don't know if you wanted to add anything.
There's actually a pretty good point that may reinforce that came out very recently. This is huge, actual potential scientific news. And it is a study that was done over the last several weeks, or they just wrapped up, um, where they concluded that evidence showed that placental mammals, which is mammals like humans who
Mhm.
have live birth and things like that, who are a certain level of thinking capacity and things like that, did in fact live with dinosaurs,
Yeah, I saw this.
because
I saw
evidence
this.
of their being there survived. It showed that they survived the asteroid that supposedly killed off the dinosaurs, which means that they're potentially, while it's not like a definite, like, oh yeah, there were humans there, it's a very gigantic potential that says human ancestors were around at the time and could have lived through the event past the dinosaurs, which could very well mean that people of some kind, whether they were, anything close to us or whether they were a precursor species or whatever,
Right.
existed with dinosaurs, which is big. I mean, it makes
Real
every
big.
little kid like grew up with dinosaurs thinking, "Oh, that's so great. We did have
Yeah.
dinosaurs." But it definitely pushes back the timeline of humanity by a bunch.
Which I have really been adamant in espousing for such a long time that we're a lot older than we like to believe ourselves to be, at least this current cycle of human beings. I don't know about the cycle before us because I think that what happens is we build ourselves up massive civilizations and then somebody does something or the earth does something. It says it's cataclysm time, folks, and then a fault line breaks or a volcano erupts or something just massive happens and wipes out almost all of civilization, maybe save for a couple pockets of humanity. And then it takes however long to build back up again. So we basically get pushed back into the Stone Age. But it's really funny that we were talking about the Baghdad battery. We're talking about the I got to pronounce this right, the Antikythera
Hmm.
mechanism, and these are ancient. These are
Hmm.
ancient,
Hmm.
advanced technologies that most of us, like if you're average everyday person, they wouldn't know how to put that together. They wouldn't know how to put a battery together. To
Yeah,
be
I
honest with
don't know
you,
how to build a batter from scratch. I have no idea. I know
same.
about the potato in the water to make electricity and things, but that's kind of a battery, but it's not exactly what the Baghdad battery is. That's a real,
Mhm.
like, composite thing built from materials
Right,
people made.
right.
People made the glass, people made all the
Yes,
pieces. It's not just some random like natural stuff.
the copper
Somebody
wiring
made
that
that.
was
Uh-huh.
in, the rod of iron, and we'll get into that
Somebody
because
had a plan.
a little blurb on that because I still want to talk about it. I think it's fascinating. You do the plus minus the division math stuff and wires and charges, boom, battery. I mean, it's not too far from the truth, to be honest with
Yeah.
you. Negative and positive energies, that's all you're doing. But what if the ancient times they had electricity, but they didn't go the route of positive and negative? What if they had a completely different way to do their energy? If we look at it, and we'll probably talk about this maybe in the next episode if I can find enough information. Ley lines. Ley lines don't get enough credit for what they can accomplish both via the power that they hold. If anybody ever seen a map of ley lines, One sits like one of the big powerhouses sits on the Vatican, the most religious center in the world. And I'm not saying religious center like I'm saying this religion's the biggest. What I'm saying is everybody knows the Vatican. Everybody. You could say Mecca. You could probably say Mecca, but I would say the Vatican just for sheer amount of historical reference of what it is and the history that's been there and the things that have come through that facility in and of itself makes it larger than life. And there's a ley line sitting right underneath it. And the ley lines have been known to cause influences. So it's not just something like energy, but it's like the energy to
Mm.
influence people and the charismatic aspect of it. Because I remember popes that have come through that look like dead men. What's his face looked like Palpatine, the guy that got kind of
Hmm.
kicked out. That was John Paul II. And then there was the guy right after him that looked like
Benedict,
Benedict, I think. Yeah, he looked
wasn't
like
it?
Palpatine. I don't remember him. And then the one guy after him, and I don't know who the current is. I'm not a practitioner of the Catholic religion, so you won't find me knowing too much
This is
about the
the guy
popes.
after Benedict. Pope Benedict was right before this guy. So the current guy that's in there is, yeah, he's the latest one.
So yeah, but I do find Catholicism as a whole fascinating. It's an odd mix of pagan ideology and Christian ideology put together for a purpose. Because back in the old days, they didn't want to tick off the barbarians, because the barbarians themselves, or the different barbarian races that were around then, the Vandals, um
Gauls.
the Gauls, the Goths, the Visigoths, all of those, the Huns, all that basically could have taken and wiped out Rome all the way. And they said, we'll just incorporate some of your beliefs, some of our beliefs, we'll leave things in peace. And that's what they did. So
For a while.
Catholicism sprang forth, yeah, for a while, till they said, now we're powerful, now we're just going to take what we want. Um,
And then they failed.
and then they failed, and then the whole place
Yep.
burned while Nero supposedly played the fiddle, supposedly. And yes, I remember this. That was the blood of Saint Janus. Was that
Hmm.
episode? That was our sacred relics episode. You guys can go check that on Spotify. I need to get back into my Spotify uploads because we switched over. Kind of wish we wouldn't have, but mistakes were made, lives were saved, people were given new hope. Star Wars. I don't know. I don't know what we're doing. So to get into some things that I want to talk about tonight, I want to talk about the automaton. I don't think we've given the automaton enough love here on this uncanny earth. And I'm going to start by talking about the most famous automaton in and of itself, and that is Talos. Now, some of you know Talos from the Elder Scrolls, that people worship Talos. He was an emperor, but goes on to die, and he's deified after his death. But this Talos is basically, he is the way we view artificial intelligence today. Something that moves on its own accord, something that was created, and then something that kind of does its own thing. But Hesiod, who was a Greek poet who lived from 750 to 650 BC, offered a tale regarding a large automaton by the name of Talos. Now, Talos is a brass humanoid who measured about 30 meters. This is in this tale. This isn't in, he's in another one.
Hmm.
This equated to about 98 feet. Now, if you remember on our episode where I did the Giants presentation, in Islam, Adam was supposedly, well, in part of a hadith, Adam was supposedly 90 feet tall, with his sons being around 60 feet tall, Cain and Abel. Anyway, he was created by Hephaestus at the behest of Zeus. This was to protect Europa from people who would end up trying to kidnap her. And he was also given to Minos to help protect the island of Crete against invaders. Now, the interesting fact about him is he had a single nail in his body that ran from his head to his ankle. And it was like a vein that ran from the head to the ankle, that kind of life force, or Ichor, Ichor. It was kind of that energy that caused him to move. Now, it was said that he was a survivor from the age of bronze, and that he descended from a brazen race that sprang from Malay, and that was an ash tree nymph. Now, this was according to the Argonautica. The less famous Greek poetry, if you will, the Odyssey being one of the most famous, the Iliad. But then you have the Argonautica about Jason and the Argonauts. So I don't know if how many of you have actually read some Greek literature. I have never read the Argonautica, but I bought it at a yard sale
Mm.
last year for like a quarter. I was like, I'm gonna buy this. I like to have some classic literature in the house because I look at some of those classic literatures like they are telling you about technology in only the way that they can understand it for that time period. That if you look past the poetry of it and look at it in a research scientific standpoint, you'll find some things that are very similar to what we um, encompass today in terms of our historical documentation on technology. Now, in the Argonautica itself, Talos is defeated via the sorceress Medea. Now, Talos in the Argonautica, let me say this is 8 foot tall. 8 feet tall? Is it 8 feet tall? Do you say that way? 8 feet or 8 foot? It's 8 feet, right? In
You
the
can say it either
sentence?
way.
Okay. He's
Say
eight
it either
feet
way.
tall. And so what happens is Medea causes these death spirits. If you guys want a particular thing to sort of compare it to, the Death Eaters or the flying, what were the flying things in the Lord of the Rings? What were those called? Whenever they put the ring on, they could see
Oh,
them.
the Nazgul,
The
the
Nazgul, kind of like
wraiths,
that.
the
Yeah,
wraiths.
the Wraiths. And
Mm.
so they would fly around Talos, kind of distracting him, and it would cause him to scrape his ankle and basically pull the nail out, and all of the life force spilled out from Talos, which caused him to come crashing down. So here's this automaton that is only held together by a nail. Now, if we want to liken it to something, what it sounds like to me, if you take a car and the oil in it, and the oil is to lubricate the engine, the parts there, and it keeps your engine lubricated and moving, right? If you fail to add oil or all the oil drains out and you go to run the engine will end up grinding and seizing up. This will end up causing a stalling of your vehicle and or possibly ruining the engine. Same kind of concept here. Talos Principle game was pretty fun. I played that one. It wasn't too bad. Nothing new under the sun. You're right, James. Nothing new under the sun. They like to tell us there is, but we know better. I think you and I both know better. I'd say feet personally. Okay. That's kind of sounded more right to me too, but it is what it is. Northern Ohio River, it's feet. South of there, it's foot. So that's hilarious because I have family from both ends, so I can say it both times. I can say it both ways if I felt the need to do so. But yes, Talos, a very interesting figure in mythology, but also a very interesting idea that with us, if you cut one of our carotid arteries, I believe there's the one in the neck and there's one in, I believe, the thigh. I think it's the thigh closer to the groin area. And if
Mm.
you cut that, you basically bleed out.
Yeah,
And
there's no helping you.
your heart needs to pump the blood to get everything going in the body. And if you're drained of blood, your heart will no longer work. So it's interesting how they kind of knew that, knew the way the body worked, knew the way these things work. Now, the core, which I find could be a fuel like substance. Now, if we remember correctly, they had something called Greek fire.
Hmm.
Still has not been replicated to this day. I don't think people even know what it was made out of. I don't know if there was ever any studies done where they tried to replicate it. It almost
They've
sounds like napalm, but I don't think it was napalm. I think it was,
yeah
yeah,
they've
also inside the upper arm. Good call, James. Thank you for
they've
that.
tried to do different things to figure it out. The closest they can come up with is that it might be a form of phosphorus,
Mm,
because you could get the phosphor and things from, you can get some of those natural materials, but they don't know what the mix is. They don't know exactly, because it was supposedly it would float on water and
right.
burn on the water. Now oil burns on water, but it doesn't float like on the water in the same way this stuff did. This stuff was supposed to have coated and stuck, so if you put a boat through it, it would then cling to your boat
Yep.
and things like that, and it would cling to people, and phosphorus does that. We know that because there's been war crimes and things dealing with it, and that kind of stuff. But they've the way that it's described isn't exactly the same. It's different enough that they can't say that conclusively. And again, they don't know the mix, so they don't know if people
Yeah.
at the time were capable of making phosphorus the way that we are able to make it.
Or napalm, because it almost sounds like
Hmm.
napalm a little bit too.
Hmm.
But I don't know if
Because they're both
napalm.
related.
I don't know if napalm burns on the water. It might, but I know it's clingy. Like if you
Mm,
get it on your skin, it's bad news bears. You'll
mm.
100% burn the heck out of your skin. The Tales of the Marvelous and Strange, which is a offshoot. This beautiful book right here. There you go. You guys can have a look at that. a book that was given to me, a very fascinating book. I've read pretty much half of this at this point, around half of it. Solid book. I've used it for a lot of my research purposes. It's almost like 1001 Arabian Nights. It's kind of like part of that whole part and parcel of a nice of the Arabian Nights. Thank you,
Mm.
Apple Tree Jamboree. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Very nice book, gotten to me from a very nice person. I've read that. I'm about halfway through. I That book I dissect, so it's not like I can just read it like it's fiction. I like to sit down. I like to read over it, and then I like to dissect it. The interesting thing that came from this, and this was I actually had this part read to me, and it was a very fascinating um, uh, topic. It actually comes from the story of four hidden treasures and strange things that occurred. And this is the first quest. Now, these four quests, there's four quests in this story, and each one they're looking for the treasure of uh, King Shaddad bin Ad, the antediluvian ruler himself that I have spoke upon ad nauseum at different presentations, different episodes of this Uncanny Earth, and just anybody who will listen to me talk about it. I mean, everybody knows this. Me talking about Iran is almost like me talking about, Zoroastrianism, by how much I've talked about both of those things. So
Here
one hundred
come the
percent.
Giants talks again. Oh
Yeah,
no.
here we go again. Yeah, but so in this first story, there's a series of adventures, and it's kind of like the Argonautica. It's kind of like Jason the Argonaut. It's like it's almost like oh, Indy Saurus here. What's up, Indy? What's going on with you, buddy? Welcome, welcome. It's kind of like the Iliad, the Odyssey, the Argonautica. It's a group of men that get together and go on an adventure. It's the
Mm.
best way I can put it. But during this first story, there is a series of men and a series of tales that they go out looking for this ring and this knife, but they don't know what it is. There's only one man that knows what it is, but he knows what he's looking for. So they go through a series of trials and tribulations looking to find this ring and this knife that Shaddad bin Ad had procured or had made, something dealing with his power. And we know about magical rings from the Ring of Solomon that we had talked about in an episode previous and prior. So what happens is they go through this tunnel and they end up going through a cave, from this tunnel into a cave, and they come upon this ladder. Well, at the top of the ladder there is a bronze statue. They don't think anything of it, but then the bronze statue calls down to them and says, "Who is coming up?" And the leader of their group yells back and says, "Glory brings an inheritance of riches." And it's almost like he had to say this code word to be able to get up this ladder. But the way the thing moves in the book and the way it's articulated leads one to believe that it was an automaton. And the automaton ideology aspect notion is heavy in Arabic folklore. We have to remember that the Arabs were very intelligent when it came to a lot of things like automatons, chemistry, mathematics, all of that. You know, a lot of our crusades that were happening in Israel, a lot of information, a lot of knowledge, a lot of the books that were written by Islamic scholars, such as Al Jazari, who we'll talk about momentarily, were taken,
Mm.
taken, copied, taken and not returned, because that happens a lot too. You'll find that happens in history a lot. Things just mysteriously disappear, as I like to say. It happened in Nikola Tesla's time, and it happens here. So books were taken, but the idea of the automaton and inventions from an automaton does come from Al Jazari. And I'm going to give you his real name. And I thought this is kind of interesting because Muslim names are very long in some for some people. So this one is Al Shiak Ra'is Al Amal Badi Al Zaman Abu Al Is Ibn Ishmael Ibn Al Razaz Al Jazari, who wrote a book describing different inventions, and inventions such as the following: an automated girl serving drinks, an automated moving peacock, automatic gates driven by hydropower, i.e., water, and automatic machines, home appliances, and musical automata powered by water. Now, I'm going to pull this up here because I want you guys to have a look at this. Let me make sure I can. Pull up the picture here. It'll be a good look to see. Huh. Dead. I mean, I could.
He didn't
This
have his pen ready. He
uh,
wasn't ready to take notes.
was not. I was not. I mean, I have the notes right here too. So it's he very well might have hated school. That might be 100% facts. He might have hated school. The teacher calls on him. That's why his name was Al Jazari, because she was like, "No, we're not doing that. We're not doing that.
You
We're
leave the
not
rest of
doing
your
that.
names at home.
You leave your names at home." So let's pull this up here. I want to pull this up for you guys so you guys can sort of see what I'm talking about here. There we go. Okay. So yeah, right here. This is the automatic serving girl right here, as we see. I don't know how well you guys can see that. It's small on our screen because I'm on a monitor,
Mhm.
but that's the automatic serving girl or the automated serving girl. Um, so for her, the liquid is actually stored in a tank. So basically, it'd be stored in a tank with a reservoir from which the drink drips into a bucket. And after 7 minutes, into a cup, after which the waitress appears out of an automatic door serving the drink. So if you look inside here, all the little parts and pieces, this is basically a robot,
Mhm.
basically a robot that functions and is able to serve drinks. Now, if we go down a little bit further here, you will see there is a automatic hand washing station. An automatic hand washing station. Now, for those of you that don't know, let's do this. And especially if anybody's seen Arabic handwriting, oof, looks like my handwriting when I don't even try to write nice. Oh, there we go. Indeed. And there you go. So this is an automated hand washing station. Now it's a little more sophisticated of a hand washing device. Here, this is the Peacock one, and this is where humanoid automata act as servants to offer soap and towels. Now here you see the peacock right here, right, and then under here you see the servant that would offer the towels or what have you. Very complex and interesting designs here. The Arabic world was a fascinating one, and you have the water reservoirs down here that you would pull the water from, go up in here, and then come out of the mouth of the peacock. And here is the humanoid here that would essentially um, deliver your towels and soap. So when you're done, I wonder how they would wash that. Now, here, this thing is cool. This is the musical automaton. This is a boat with four automatic musicians, a harpist, a flautist, and two drummers that float on a lake to entertain guests at royal drinking parties. The mechanism features a programmable drum machine with pegs, cams, that bump into little levers that operate the percussion. The drummer can be made to play different rhythms and different drum patterns, right? Drum patterns, if the pegs are moved around. The automata were a robot band which performed more than 50 facial and body actions during each musical selection. So yeah, check this out here. Now this is just a fascinating. Like, let me see if I can increase the. Yeah, there we go. Get a little bit bigger on the picture there. Um, but look at this. You have this is all music. These are all basic robots that
Mhm.
could do different facial animations.
It reminds me a little bit. Deadpool says it's in his next comment after this. He says it's kind of like an early form of the player piano, but it also reminds me of modern things you'd find at like Disney or
Chuck
a
E.
number of
Cheese.
different theme parks where
Chuck
you
E.
just
Cheese.
yeah they do their thing, they play the music, and it's super interesting as and there goes with the
Five Nights at
Freddies.
Freddy's.
With the Freddies, got
Five
to bring
Nights at
that up if you're talking about it.
Frederico's. Five Nights
Um,
at Frederico's.
but yeah, it's and
Yeah, same
it's
concept.
really interesting that this stuff may have been around for a lot longer than we think it did, and it's not new technology. And I don't want to pull you too far from where your notes are, but I do want to throw this out there because this is pretty interesting. Um, Talking about early automatons, our good buddy, former buddy, Mr. Zachariah Sitchin, not really our buddy, but we like to
No,
think so anyway.
we like
Um,
to have hung out with him.
yeah, he when he did his research on Mesopotamian myth and things,
Hmm.
he investigated about Gilgamesh and the trials that he went through. And one of the first things that Gilgamesh did on his journey to go find immortality and to help his people was to go to the cedar forest and fight the giant Humbaba. Now, Sitchin believed that Humbaba was himself an automaton because he had 7 auras that he could take off of himself and give away, which he did, and that's how he was defeated because Gilgamesh fooled him and tricked him. But he had these 7 things on him, 7 pieces of equipment, one of which was like a stun beam, basically. Enkidu and Gilgamesh arrived in the cedar forest, and Humbaba like fires a stun ray at him, and his skin is supposed to have been possibly tree-like, but you could also think, well, maybe if it's brown in color, maybe that means it was slightly bronze in color, which again speaks to a common theme in early automata in the ancient world, that bronze, that brass appearance, showing that they were clearly something different than real people.
Yeah, yeah, and I think too, you kind of have to wonder too if the terracotta statues at some point were representations maybe of automatons, maybe
Hmm.
not so much the emperor's arm, but maybe automatons. We have different ideas in ancient mythology of these beings serving as what would appear to be automatons.
Hmm.
We have that happening. And I think to me, it states that once again, I am a firm believer that we were more advanced than we like to give ourselves credit for. We like to say, oh, we were only advanced in the past, 100 years that we've only advanced. But like I said, you can't compare advancements the way we have advanced to the way ancient civilizations have advanced. You can't compare the two. I know we like to
Hmm.
try that, but it's hard to do that because we don't have the same moving pieces and parts that the ancients had. They had
Hmm.
different environments, they had different materials to work with. Hell, they had different animals. You know, we forget that the dodo in terms of time just recently went extinct. This is a
Hmm.
thing that used to
Hmm.
exist. I mean, it didn't exist when we were growing up because I think that thing went extinct in the 1800s, if I'm not mistaken.
Supposedly, yep. Yeah.
So, there were animals, and you kill certain animals, you get certain things from them. Ambergris was very popular in perfumes and colognes and things like that, and that came from whales. Ambergris was a byproduct of whales. Um, so it's little things like that that could lead to totally different technological advancements that we don't have today that might have given them somewhat of a technological advancement in a certain area as opposed to us where we have a certain technological advancement in another area. And like I said, I just there's a lot of things, and if we look at
Hmm.
the oh, I'm trying to think of the name of it. It's a little, well, they make pins of it, but it's like that little spaceship from the South American region. It looks like a little
The little
spaceship.
golden ship.
Thank
Yeah.
you. Yes, that. Once
It's supposed
again.
to be a bird, the golden bird, it
Yeah.
said, but it's basically like a ship or an airplane or something.
Yes. Because why would you make the Nazca lines? What would you make them for? And like, if you're worshiping a deity, right? And if we're going to get into it, if you're going to worship a deity, you're going to want to make sure those lines are perfect. Well, how are you going to be able to see if what you have drawn or what you have created is perfect? You would have to have an aerial view of said Nazca lines in Peru, because if you don't and you make a mistake, and you would have to tell people, hey, I need you to go this way, I need you to go this way,
Hmm.
move 100 yards this way, we need to create the wings, we need to create the
Somebody
the
had to have a
ant.
blueprint. Like
Yes.
somebody had to have had an exact set of measurements to guide somebody along a path and to keep them straight too, because we know
Mhm.
just walking a straight line, whether you're sober or otherwise, It's sometimes very difficult for the average person just trying to, like, because you'll go and then you'll just slightly veer off a little bit, not intending to. You might just, walk off a little bit to the left by just a centimeter, but that's enough to derail the entire line. And
Yes.
after a few feet, it's completely wrong. That little tiny centimeter, boom, you're gone. So somebody has to be there to guide you along that straight line from here to there, to make that monkey, to make that bird, to make this, to make that. They have to have the plan right in front of them, because otherwise it's going to look like a mess. I mean, the spirals and things, that makes more sense, but even those are perfect spirals. It's
Yep.
not like spirals like this. It's straighter and better than what I can do just drawing a circle on a piece of paper.
You'd almost have to have a spirograph. Well, I had one as a kid and I loved that thing.
Mhm.
If I can ever find one of those again, I would like to have one because I would like to just make the little designs that they always did. I think that'd be a very cathartic thing. But yeah, the spirograph, you could make all these crazy looking, really cool geometrical images based off of that. So I think they had to have something like a whatever, an ancient type of spirograph or an ancient type of automaton that would be able to map their lines out for them and walk that line, because human beings, we are imperfect. So wait, did I say that right? I think I said that right. um we cannot create a straight line. I mean, some people probably can. I'm not going to say nobody can, but it's hard for the average human being to create a straight line. Like, it's
Unassisted.
unassisted. Yes.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, imperfect was right. Good. I had to double check myself here. But in order to do that, right? In order to make a straight line, you would need something like a ruler. And I know they didn't have like a small, like little ruler, like, going. It had to be a serious thing. And you know what? Just for I'm gonna pull these up so you guys can see what they look like, because these things have fascinated me for such a long time. And I think I'm trying to remember what the name of the what is the name of the one in England, the something man?
It's not the Green Man, is it?
No,
It's
like
they have the white horse. They have the white horse,
it's not the white
and
horse.
then they have the Uffington Man. The no, what is it?
It could have been something like that. If you
I
guys in the
feel like
chat
that's
know,
close, but
if you guys in the chat know, please let me know. I'm trying to find a picture of this so you guys can be like,
while you're doing that, I'm going to bring up another good point.
please
Um,
do, please do.
in that we know that ancient knowledge of mathematics and things was preserved in
Hmm.
secret societies for a long time. Now, these days, you talk about the Freemasons, and it's kind of like, oh, it's just an old guys club, and all they do is these like weird rituals that don't really matter, but they're known to have supposedly been trying to control the world and whatnot. But before all of that, the the Masons were an exclusive guild of highly trained people that you were only involved if you knew the formulas, if you could perform the formulas, if you actually could make things. It was a lot different in the ancient world than it is today as far as that goes. And who knows how far that stretched. They said at the time in ancient writings that the masonry came from even older sources. And it's stuff like this, like you just pulled up the lines there, like the
Yep.
straightness of all this, it gives proof to that there was some group of people that knew about this stuff, that knew about angles, they knew about straight lines, they knew about geometry, they knew about all these things, and they preserved that knowledge for so long.
I mean, look at that bird. That looks one like, look at even the wings and look at the way the feathers are coming off of that bird. That isn't just something that people were like, I don't know what I'm going to do here. That took timing, planning, mathematical equations. This took something that we haven't done. And we could do this. I mean, like I said, you'd have to have someone in the air kind of dictating where you need to go and what you need to do. But that right there, to me, that signifies that there's something more than just, we couldn't get this or we couldn't do that. I
Mm-hmm.
think it's a lot deeper than that. I have said that it's a lot deeper than that. I don't think that we were just born yesterday. We were born at night, but we weren't born last night. There is something to all of this. And what really brings it home for me personally is things like the Nazca lines. Stuff we can't, we can't pinpoint um a lot of the tools and the things that were used in order for us to get to where we are today, right?
Mm-hmm.
We just can't. But what we can do is we can look at something like the Nazca line, like the bird, like the ant. I didn't show the ant, but like those things, and say to ourselves, you know what? There's got to be more to life. There's got to be more to these ancient civilizations. There's got to be more to the past than what we are looking at currently and presently today. And we have to start rethinking the mental mind state of they were just a dumb civilization. And this is a good point. Cain was thought to make the first city. However, I think that is in regards to him making the first city in that area. And I think that the Garden of Eden, in and of itself, was a giant processing center for food. It was a way for the civilizations in the area to get food, to eat, to commune with God, to be basically immortal. It was almost like a way for them to get the food necessary to remain immortal.
Mm-hmm.
Because after the fall of, or I shouldn't say the fall of, but the closing off of Eden, people started dying because it doesn't really talk about death until you get much, until this first sin is committed, the knowledge of good and evil, then they're locked out and then people start dying. People have to start
Mm-hmm.
foraging for food. The interesting aspect of this too is it talks about, and this is kind of a little bit off tangent, but it wouldn't be this Uncanny Earth if we didn't get a little bit of this Uncanny and Tangy. What people don't understand is in Genesis, when it talks about, kicking both Adam and Eve out, God tells Eve, I will multiply the pain on your pregnancy. He didn't say you'll be pregnant and it'll hurt. He said, I will multiply the pain of your pregnancy. Think about this. Meaning that there were kids that were had in the Garden of Eden. There were children that were begotten in the Garden of Eden. Because why would you word it in such a way that it would be led to believe that pregnancies couldn't happen? He said, I will multiply your pain. Not make you to where you will be
Mm-hmm.
pregnant and be in pain, but I will multiply that pain.
Which could be a reference to the fact that in the garden, we have better medical facilities, we have better painkillers, better anesthesia. Whereas if you go out there, you ain't got any of that, it's going to be more difficult for you. A little bit
This
of
is
logic.
a
A little
little
bit
bit
of
of
logic.
logic. If you eat of this tree, thou shalt surely die. And people are still trying to figure out what it was that apple symbolized. I don't know if it was food. I don't know what it was. I don't think it was necessarily food. I think that something had to have happened in that facility, in that area. It obviously was a place where people came and got their foodstuffs from. And I think that because Adam and Eve weren't the only people in that, excuse me, in that on the planet. If we read the Bible, it says Genesis 1:6 says, Go forth, I made mankind to go forth and multiply. This is before the creation of Adam and Eve. So go forth and multiply. Well, if you only made two people and God is against incestuous relations, why would you think otherwise? So now we have man and woman, and we have these ancient civilizations like Nod. Nod, where
Mhm.
after Abel was slain, Cain went off to the land of Nod. And
And
he even
found people.
and he said, if I go over there, they will kill me. And
Hmm.
God said, I will put a mark on you so they will not kill you. These are just things to think about. Is you could take it for whatever whatever, however, wherever, whenever you want to take it. But I feel like if you sit and look into the Bible, knock off all the biases, whatever people say out on social media about how it's this, how it's that. Sit down and actually read it. You're going to find it to be very fascinating. Just like I sat down and read the Quran. At the time it was very at the time everybody was like, it's a violent religion. It's this, that, and the third. But I mean, you just got to really sit down and read it and really understand the situation, understand the political climates, understand how things work. So yeah, and that will about do it for us tonight here on this Uncanny Earth. My co-host did not get to talk much tonight. He
I
didn't get a
got
lot
the
of
one
words
thing I
in.
wanted out there. I talked about Humbaba because
Yeah,
once I saw the title of the episode, I was like, oh, I got a good thing for that. And
yeah.
then once you got into the automatons, I was like, oh, perfect. I'm glad
Set
I
him
looked
up.
that up.
I set him up, and
So
he knocked it out of the park. As always, that's what we do around here. So, but yes. So next week we will be talking about ley lines. So get yourselves ready for that. Get yourselves however you need to be settled. We'll be doing that. And I got an announcement. I will not be here on the 21st. The 21st. So the reins will go to my co-host,
oh boy, another solo spider invasion.
and I'm looking forward to seeing what he has. If you did not catch it, go please rewatch the last episode where my co-host talked about the zombie apocalypse. You're not going to want to miss that one. Also, there is no let's talk about that because that is on a hiatus. They'll break until the
Yep.
new season starts here in about
Season
2
2,
weeks. July, what was that? July, what was that?
17th, July 17th.
Excelente. That is in
Season 2.
basically 2 weeks. That's basically 2 weeks from Monday.
Mm-hmm.
So 2 weeks from Monday. Make sure you're all about that. I hope you all have a great 4th of July. Please be safe. Whether you're
Careful with
drinking,
them fireworks.
that's what I was about to say. Whether you're drinking or
Don't blow
playing
your
with
hands off.
fireworks, do not blow your hands off. I don't want you
You
guys
got
being
to be
like,
able to
blow my
type
hands
up the
off.
show here. We can't have you losing
Yeah.
your fingers.
Yeah, we cannot. It's not a good look. It's not a good thing. So yes. Anyways, I want to thank everybody for showing up today. Let's all start with we had Little Beans and Rice with it. Then James. Then we had Z-Man, Z-Money. Then we had Deadpool showed up. And then we had Apple. And then we had Indy. And then we had James and Apple and Deadpool and everybody else showing up. So I love you guys. Let's make a little toasty toast. I saw you raise your glass. I just got some Sprite lemonade for
Hey,
tonight's
fair is
episode.
fair.
There it
No
is.
hate.
Anyways, guys, that is it for me. That is it for my co-host. We have things to do. Time to turn off the lights. Why be boring when you can be uncanny? We will see you folks next week. Peace.